On this relatively early Monday morning, you are listening to James Trisner on another live podcast of Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio. I believe this is the first show that I've done since the school I go to relaunched our radio program this past week. We have not been able to do anything online. That's going to take a little bit of time, but the school broadcasts all turn out very, very well. And all the DJs that are how should I put this? Are part of the group that we have to revive the radio club have done an absolutely phenomenal job. Everybody's done their part and it's made it so much fun. But more or less, unless there's a really big breaking news thing, I'm not going to be doing too many individual things. I'm more or less going to be doing a bunch of things wrapped up into one show like I used to. Kind of like what I've been doing at school. If I do sound like I'm taking a little more time between talking, I have a very painful ulcer under my tongue, and it's preventing me from talking or eating as normal, and it sucks. At this point, mild water is the only thing that keeps from raging. But anyways, we had a very interesting weekend in the world of sports. Selection Sunday was yesterday, as the 2014 NCAA bracket has been filled out. I filled out several brackets, but at this point, I think what I'll just do is I'll just tell you guys my more or less the bracket that I think is going to do the best. Alright, in this bracket, my Sweet 16 matchups are as follows. I have Florida versus UCLA. That was my Twitter, by the way, that updated. Florida versus UCLA. Syracuse versus Canada. Canada, oh my god, I can't believe I just said Canada. Syracuse versus Kansas. Close enough, though. Florida versus UCLA and Syracuse versus Kansas. Gosh, what did I get Canada? Virginia versus Michigan State and Iowa State versus Villanova. In the other matchups, the Florida, UCLA, Syracuse, Kansas in the South, Virginia, Michigan State, and then Iowa State versus Villanova in the East. That's just my projections. On the other hand, in the West, I have Arizona and San Diego State and Creighton and Wisconsin. And in the Midwest, Wichita State versus Louisville, Duke versus Michigan. The way I see it playing out, I think Arizona's played well enough, even though they lost one of their better players for the season, to get to the Final Four. And I believe the team they're going to overcome in the Elite Eight is Creighton. Now, Creighton behind Doug McDermott has had a phenomenal year. And Wisconsin's a team they'll play, but, Creighton has played well in their last 12 games. They're 8-4. They beat Villanova twice, which is very impressive. They beat Arizona State by 28, which is very impressive. And overall, their BPI rank is 15th. And in the Big East now, the Big East being as weakened as it is by the loss of Pitt and Syracuse, that's a pretty big accomplishment to be that good. Now, in the Midwest, I like Wichita State to make it the Elite Eight. I don't think they're going to go any further than that because they haven't played anybody good. And if you were to look at that matchup, Duke versus Wichita State, Duke's only five behind them in the BPI rank. They score more points. They give up more. But they've played 9 games against top 25 opponents. And they have played a lot better. They played a lot better against better teams. Like any of the teams that Wichita State that were average, they still struggled against. And they blew out the really shitty ones. Then you've got Duke, and Duke played a lot of good teams. North Carolina, mean, Pitt's in the tournament, even though they're not that great. Pitt's in the tournament. North Carolina, they also had to play Syracuse. They also had to play Arizona, Kansas, Virginia, Michigan. A lot of good teams. They're battle tested. I think Duke makes it to at least the Elite Eight, and I think they'll take out Wichita State. So in the second half of the bracket, I have Duke playing Arizona for the right to go to the national title game. On the other side, I really do like Florida. They're just so good defensively. I mean, Billy Donovan's won two titles already in his career at Florida. Florida's undefeated in the SEC. I mean, I'm not a big Florida fan by any stretch. If anything, I'd have to say I kind of dislike Florida because I'm a fan of Georgia and because I kind of like A&M, but still, it doesn't matter. They're a great team. They're a really good team. And I feel they're going to play Syracuse. I think they'll rebound Syracuse from a pretty shabby finish of the season. They were 7-5 over their last 12. I mean, they started 25-0, and they've been 2-5 since. I think they'll turn it on. I think they'll play a little bit better in the tournament because, hey, they were good enough to get to 25-0. And Tyler Enos and C.J. Fair, they've had some really good games this season. I don't think they're done yet. I mean, Ohio State could throw a monkey wrench into things, but Ohio State, their record against top 25 is 2-3, so that's kind of questionable. I mean, Syracuse is 3-2. It's not much better, but they've had to play better teams. Villanova, Duke. In my opinion, there's no doubt the ACC is better than the Big Ten. Because you get two ACC teams with number 1 seeds, and it just goes to show they're a lot deeper as a conference. And I like them to take on. I like Syracuse and Florida, and I have to pick Florida in that game. I think Florida will get through comfortably, but I think it will be tough because you've got Boeheim's defense against Donovan's defense, and that should be a defensive. That should be just a battle. Spreaker gets that point. In the bottom half, some about Virginia. I'm just not really crazy about Virginia, but if you look at them, they're 11-1 in their past 12, and they're 16-2 in the ACC. That is really impressive. They split with Duke. They beat UNC by 15. However, the loss to VCU is kind of questionable. Wisconsin did beat them by 10. But, I have to go ahead on record in saying I think they're good enough to get to the Final Four, and I think the team that they'll play to get there is Villanova. Villanova in the bottom part of that in the East is clearly the best team there. The only team that I think could even potentially test them would be Iowa State. Iowa State just winning the Big 12 title, and they boast a pretty powerful offense with DeAndre Kane, Melvin Ejim, and they're going to score a lot of points. But they're going to give up a lot, too. That's the problem. So I like Villanova to fall to Virginia in that bracket. So now we've got Florida versus Virginia and Duke versus Arizona. I mean, yeah, you got three number ones and a number 3. But, again, if I were to think of which the number 1 seeds is the weakest, it would have to be Wichita State because Florida is right now head and shoulders the best team in the country. Undefeated in the SEC, 32-2, kind of says it all. Arizona lost one of their... they lost Brandon Ashley, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't because they've played good up to still get the number 1 seed. I mean, they were the number 1 team in the country for a long time. And you look at it right now in the BPI rank, they are the number 1 ranked team in the country in terms of BPI. And they'll play Duke. And I got a funny feeling Duke is going to take that matchup because of their superior depth, because of Jabari Parker, and also because of Rodney Hood. The only problem could be their rebounding, but if you look at the games that they've played this year they've played more games against top teams. They've played 9 games against top 25 opponents versus 5 for Florida, provided they play in the title game. Because I'm picking Duke to play Florida in this bracket, and Florida to win 68-64. I mean, I'm probably going to be wrong. I mean, I'm usually wrong by the time the second game comes around. I'm like, oh, well, can't get a perfect bracket now. I'm just going to hope it didn't happen like that one year where Duke lost to Lehigh in the first round, because that was just embarrassing. That bracket was just embarrassing. But that's my main bracket. I did do another bracket. Actually, I've done two I felt completely filled out, and one I'm about to start. In that Final Four, I've got Florida versus Michigan State and Louisville versus Arizona. Do not sleep on Michigan State. They slumped like hell during the middle of the season, but they rolled to the Big Ten title. They got all their pieces back in place. They could make a deep run in this tournament. Keith Appling, Gary Harris, great backcourt. And you've got Adrian Payne, the big guy in the middle. And of course you got Tom Izzo, great coach. I would have to look at it right now being Michigan State as being, if anything, not the second favorite, but a 1A, as a 1A kind of thing with Michigan State and Virginia, because Michigan State is just very tough defensively. And on the other side, you got Louisville, who's in the same position. A number 4 seed could probably be the best team in that section. I mean, Louisville's as good of a team as any. And I got a really good feeling Louisville could potentially be back in the title game. And besides, I know Wichita State's a really good team. I just don't know if with their questionable schedule and their questionable quality of opponents that they've got a chance to make it. Other news surrounding ESPN, Novak Djokovic wins the tournament in Indian Wells over Roger Federer, 3-6, 6-3, 7-6. Again, I predicted this matchup. I said before the tournament that Federer would play Djokovic in the final and that Djokovic would beat him in 3, and I was correct. Was not right about Nadal going out early, and a lot of the big names, Berdych going out early, Del Potro pulling out, but I have to say Isner had a really nice run. He had an injury in Australia, and that kept him out for a long time this year, but he had a good run in Indian Wells, losing to Djokovic in 3 sets in the semis. I'm going to check again to see if the new rankings for the week of the 17th are out yet, because Federer only made the quarters last year in Indian Wells, and this year was the runner-up. I want to see if the rankings have changed. They haven't changed yet, but by my projections, Federer is said to gain 420 points. And if that were to hold with the way the rankings are now, that would move him up to 5th. Djokovic gains ground on Rafa Nadal. He gains 640 points, which should put him at exactly 10,900. Nadal is going to lose he had 1,000 last year. And he lost round of 32 here. So he's going to lose exactly 955 points. So Djokovic is getting closer to regaining the number one ranking. I'd have to say Federer had a great week. And finally, the bigger racket that he started hitting with the last few months has really started to show for it this year. I mean, he was using the 90 square inch and now he's using the 98. He's getting so much more spin on the ball. And that means his consistency is going up. His slice is just as effective. His forehand's getting even more bite now that it's got the spin, and he can still torque it. I have to say for Miami, I do not know if the draw is out yet. As of right now, the draw is not out yet. And if anything, Nadal did not look 100% in Indian Wells. I don't expect him to look 100% in Miami. I think he's going to be struggling again, if he even decides to play it. Murray didn't look that great in Indian Wells. Raonic took him out in 3 sets, and he didn't look that impressive in that match either, as Raonic just completely out hit him the last